Hi, everybody. Today we want to talk about, as you can probably guess, the death of the Queen and what it means for us, for the left, and for society. I think in terms of how the left is reacting, you see quite a lot of different attitudes and different reactions, and we want to look at them a little bit in today's Red Line TV short segment. I think one of the wrong attitudes is to say this is boring me to tears. I'm annoyed because I can't watch football. That's all that is on the news, etc. I don't think that's the attitude we should take about this. And it's also not really about the millions of taxpayers' money the funeral and the coronation of King Charles III next year will cost us. I think these are annoying things, but at this point in time, I think we shouldn't underestimate how important and how crucial the monarchy is to keeping capitalism and the status quo as it is. And that's why they're putting so much effort into this. That's why we all have to mourn, because especially in a period of capitalism in decline and real economic crisis, the monarchy, the regent, is supposed to be the constant in people's lives, despite everything we are all going through. I heard that about 1,000,000 times in the last 2 days. Constant. She's always been there, that queen. Don't rock the boat, in other words. The monarchy, I think, is a crucial part of ruling class ideology. As long as we accept that some people are born to rule over others, over us, we're bound to accept anything. I think the crucial role of monarchy in ideology and in ruling class ideology is absolutely hugely important and has been somewhat ignored, I think, by some on the left, and saying we shouldn't talk about the need for a republic now because the nation is grieving. Graham, what do you think about that? And I was going to show a few reactions from left MPs while you're talking.
Well, let me make a confession. I am fed up that the football has been cancelled this weekend. So there it is. But I agree, there's far more important things than that. I mean, really bad timing on the part of me and Jackie. We've just come back to England rather than going away from it. And we come back to all these portraits of the Queen, the suspension of strikes, the suspension of TUC, and all of this kind of thing. And look, let me make my position clear. My argument, my beef, is with the institution of the monarchy rather than the monarch. I never celebrate anyone's death. I probably would have done Hitler or Mussolini, and I did with Pinochet and Franco. But to me, this is not boring. It's quite worrying, the degree of national unity that obscures the real divisions in society.
So look at these comments then from Zara and John McDonnell, sort of our left leaders. I think that's quite worrying.
Well, to me, that isn't as bad as you're saying it is. Now, I've seen these for the first time. It's expressing human sympathy with people whose relatives have died. I've got no problem with that. What I do worry about is much more any concessions to the institution of the monarchy itself. And of course, to be a socialist, to my mind, of course, is to be a Republican. I think I've got a difference with you, though. I mean, let me make it absolutely clear. Two things. One, I think that the monarchy is going through a very good week as an institution, but I think that the loss of Elizabeth and her replacement by Charles III is actually bad news for the monarchy, and the new monarch will never be as popular as the old one. So this may just be a moment in time. And secondly, let me just say, we're in an acute class struggle. The main enemy is Truss, with the most right-wing government probably in history. And the main enemy is also Starmer, with probably the most useless Labour opposition in history. And I think that compared with those two, Charles III is actually a very poor third. That doesn't mean to say I ignore it. I'm not bored by it. But I think it's an important issue for socialists. But perhaps I think you may be rather overstating the absolute central significance of this issue.
It's part and parcel of the ruling class and how they rule over us, I think. And Jackie, you've obviously got a particular insight as well in terms of the role of the monarchy in, imperialism and colonialism, etc. They get a lot of trouble there.
Well, can I just say, I don't quite agree with Graham on this either. I think this change is actually quite important, particularly because we have got such a right-wing Labour Party and a right-wing government. Because what you have is this is points of vulnerability, and the whole institution of the monarchy and Parliament, they uphold each other. And when one becomes vulnerable, then they're all in trouble. That's why this rallying around is happening. Now, none of us know what Charles is going to be like. I love the way that suddenly the newspapers changed him from being a bit of a dolt, a bit of a hippy dippy in his garden, worried about climate change, to he was seen as a monarch, a royal. Wow, how well he's done. He did well by expressing sympathy to his mother. So I do think Graham is actually not quite understanding why this is important. And in terms of colonialism, there are a number of people, some people, or, who, like me, are people of colour, who've been saying, well, what did Elizabeth do? She wasn't part of slavery. Well, just to take one example, 1.2 million Kenyans were put in concentration camps during the time of Her Majesty's government. And I'm just picking out one thing there. That's just one thing I'm picking out. And again, we've had these comments. I think this one was from Rees Mogg or something, saying the wonderful thing about the Queen is she's totally objective. She's neither one side or the other. The Queen is an intrinsic part of the establishment. And she's objective whether it's a Labour establishment, as long as the Labour establishment will do what they're told, or a Tory establishment. But she is part of the establishment. And that's why we have seen the most extraordinary campaign to shut down conversation. And I'm not interested in the person. I'm not interested in the personal grief. People want to express commiserations on that. And for many people, that's an expedient thing to do. Let them get on with that. But the fact that, for example, the BBC, who bangs on about balance, is allowing no balance whatsoever. At least a quarter of people in this country already are anti-monarchy. There has been no perspective from them allowed. What we want to ask is why? And Tina's quite right here. They're scared. That's why. And what we see now is a whole conversion of this authoritarianism and how it works, that we are actually not allowed to have a conversation about this. I know, because I've been following social media, how many tweets, how many little clips have been taken down by Twitter. And apparently, for example, if you want to know a difference, go over to Irish Twitter and you will see the, shall we say, vigorous conversation that people are having on there.
Monarchy is the only string that ties the robber's bundle, as Percy Shelley put it, I think in a very coherent and clever way. It's absolutely integral. She is also, of course, the constitutional head of state. She could go to war, if the people around her decide so, with a royal prerogative. She can stop the country going to war. She can stop the country raising certain laws that go against the will of the Queen. I think this is often ignored on the left. She got rid of an Australian MP, didn't she? A PM, sorry, when they weren't to the liking of what the royalty and the establishment wanted. So I think that is more even than the figurehead. It is a crucial part of how capitalism is run. So, with that perspective, shall we discuss calling off strikes?
Could I just say one thing before we say that? Because I tend to agree with a lot of what Jackie said. I mean, what's really hit me is this deadly uniformity. For instance, one of my footballing heroes, Trevor Sinclair, a black player who used to play for West Ham, has probably lost his job now for Talk Sport for daring to say that black and brown victims of racism will not be mourning the Queen, and he's had to retract that. And it's, I mean, it's absolutely it's really quite terrible. And secondly, just on what Jackie said about Kenya, for instance, I mean, as Caroline Elkins in her brilliant book on both on Kenya and the British Empire, The Legacy of Violence shows, just all of this, of course, was done in the name of the Crown, which is really, really important. So I'm not underestimating the significance of this. I'm just trying not to overestimate it.
And similarly to the tweets we looked at from left MPs, you know, the tweets or the decisions to call off strikes, postpone, call off, we'll see, you know. I mean, there's one thing saying, okay, the day after the Queen's death, you know, the CW, that's one thing. But do you have to put out, you know, comments that don't mention the role of monarchy, that just, you know, here's the Dave Ward quote, you know, the union in service and her family, etc. These were not in service of working class people. Clearly, the ruling class is not suspending their, you know, class war. Quite the opposite. In this period, I think we'll get, you know, they're using this period to enshrine the ruling class ideology, to, you know, shove chauvinism down our throats. Isn't this the time to actually up the class war rather than down tools? Jackie?
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, why did they have to add all those bits? I think it's reasonable for them to call off the strike, you know, which is the next day and the day after, but to call off strikes that are supposed to be happening in 2 or 3 weeks' time. What is that about? For Labour councils to be, you know, shutting down diggers' festivals. Let's remember who the diggers were. The diggers were celebrating equality. We have a Labour council, I'll say it again in that Kinnock way, a Labour council shutting down a festival of equality, not to mention, you know, the huge expense and problems that gives. And, you know, why are they shutting that down and the theatres stay open? I don't quite understand this. Why aren't all the theatres closed? You know, if you're going to do that, it's very picky and choosy, but it's all gone totally bonkers, hasn't it? It really has gone bonkers. And what I suspect is, I think people are happy to do this for a day or two. You know, they've got Netflix, they've got, you know, whatever they want to go on to watch. But to have this go on for 10 days, shoved down your throat.
And 7 days after the funeral, it's going to continue.
This is, I mean, I don't know if any of you have tried to listen to any of the reporting going on BBC, but honestly, it is really, really boring. That's what it is, you know. So
yeah.
I have, you know, I think they are actually biting off the tail of the dog that they want to wag.
Yeah. Graham, you know, Mick Lynch, we've had such big hopes in him over the last few weeks. And then do you need to say something like the RMT joins the whole nation in paying its respect to Queen Elizabeth? We are all in it together type thing. I mean, this is exactly what we're not, is it?
I've still got great hopes in Mick Lynch. However, I don't endorse that. But let's again say it for what it is. Give the CWU some slack. It was the day afterwards, so there was really impossible to do anything else. I mean, just generally, I think that we've got to get it right. This is a suspension of strikes. It's not a cancellation of them. There's no indication of a cancellation of them. The class struggle will remain, and I think that you're overstating it. In 2 or 3 weeks' time, these strikes will come back and back and back. And I have very much hopes that we're in the beginning of a resurgence in which it's Truss and Starmer who are the enemy more than King Charles. But nonetheless, I accept totally the argument for a republicanism. And as a socialist, of course, I'm a dedicated anti-monarchist and republican like everybody else.
Lastly, then, to look on the upside, I mean, this is, I agree with you, this is actually a sign of the monarchy being in trouble, and rather than being strong. King Charles III, I think everybody can, will be surprised if he does a good job, doesn't wind anybody up. But I think even more perhaps interesting is the Prince Harry situation. This sort of totally undermines the idea of you're born to rule. He just had enough. He walks away. This undermines the idea that there's a natural order of things, that the monarchy is, as natural to us as fish and chips, etc. But it's actually more like chicken tikka masala, imported, totally artificial, nothing like, it was, etc. And shaped and remade as and how they want. And similarly, of course, there's a lot of countries now who are trying to do away with the Queen as head of state. Do we think this is going to be something we're seeing more of?
Yeah, of course it's something we're going to see more of. The whole establishment of capitalism is heading for crisis, and this, it's not part of it that she's died at this point. There were these extraordinary statements being said, wasn't there? I couldn't help but laugh when I heard it. I hoped this day would never come. What did they think she was? A god, for goodness sake?
Exactly. Well, yeah, a godly.
It is absolutely extraordinary. So I don't really see how they're going to prevent a crisis. But what they will do is attempt to use the funeral and the coronation to rally nationalism. And I think that is what, on the left, we have got to be watchful of. Yeah. And our response to that has to be clear-headed and long-term.
Yeah. We're looking at the role of monarchy and other issues on Monday's show of Redline TV, which is called Class War, fittingly. And we will be discussing this issue as well, because it is a crucial part of it. Join us next Monday. See you then.
Bye. Class War.